Hello again, and welcome to another edition of Digging for Gold, picking out the choice bits of gold in this week's comic releases. Sorry about the delay this week. I wanted to wait until after the season finale of Ultimate Spider-Man so I could talk a little bit about it. But first, let's get into some news items. Lots of movie news this week and not much else. It seems the hype machine is still resting after the storm that was New York Comic Con. The biggest news, of course, was the release of the new trailer for Iron Man 3. It's a drastically different tone from the past two movies, and rightly so, with a director like Shane Black at the helm. But don't take my word for it, just watch.
Got a lot of apologies to make.
Nothing's been the same since New York. You experience things, and then they're over. I can't sleep. And when I do, I have nightmares.
Honestly, there's 100 people who want to kill me.
I hope I can protect the one thing I can't live without.
Ladies, children, sheep. Some people call me a terrorist. I consider myself a teacher. Lesson number 1. Heroes. There is no such thing.
In other movie news, advertising campaigns on next year's Wolverine movie are starting up, including a brand new poster seen here. It's been revealed that the movie is actually set in the present day, taking place after X-Men 3 The Last Stand. This is contradictory to Darrenofsky's original script, which set the film in 1987. Obviously, rewrites have occurred since then. There are also rumors that Famke Jensen will reprise her role as Jean Grey, but will it be a flashback, or is another resurrection in order for the Dark Phoenix? Bad news has struck the other X movie in development. The director of X-Men First Class, Matthew Vaughn, has dropped from the second movie, X-Men Days of Future Past. Signs indicate that Bryan Singer might be his replacement, but nothing is confirmed at this time. Matthew Vaughn isn't out of the comics world for good, though. He's been reassigned to the upcoming Mark Millar adaptation, The Secret Service. In Marvel Studio news, Ming-Na Wen has been cast as one of the leads in Joss Whedon's new S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show. She'll be playing Agent Melinda May. Expect her to kick all kinds of ass, as most Whedon women do. And lastly, Frank Grillo has been cast as the villain Crossbones in Captain America: The Winter Soldier. This info comes along with confirmation that both Cobie Smulders and Scarlett Johansson will be returning for that film as well. And that's it for the movie news. Now, I'd like to talk a bit about my favorite superhero, Spider-Man. With the next movie being a year and a half away, and the comics replacing Peter Parker in both main universes, the only place to go for that snarky Parker charm is the Ultimate Spider-Man TV show on Disney XD. This week they aired the Season 1 finale, Rise of the Goblin. In it, Spidey and the rest of the S.H.I.E.L.D. crew take on Dr. Octopus, Venom, and Green Goblin. But is it worth a watch? Personally, I say yes. The show has many problems in its conception. the least of which being the over-reliance on fourth wall breaking and reusing D-list villains like the Trapster. But as a whole, the series has gotten noticeably better since its inception. The biggest strength this show has going for it is that it tries new things. It goes in a direction we've never seen Spidey go on TV. From Doc Ock being reimagined as a psychotic agoraphobe that uses his arms so he doesn't have to touch people, all the way to making Harry Osborn become Venom. Its originality is its best feature. For the new Goblin, they were inspired by his Ultimate Comics origins, in having him actually transform into a monstrous goblin creature rather than wearing a mask. He may start out as a bit of an Incredible Hulk clone, but over the course of the episode, he evolves into mostly what you would think when you see Green Goblin, glider and all. If you stopped watching the show a while back, I'd come back to it and see if it's up your alley now. It's changed quite a bit. I, for one, am looking forward to Season 2, especially if they can actually listen to some of the criticisms and adjust accordingly. With that out of the way, it's time for the real meat of the podcast, this week's comic releases. I'll start with DC. The final issue of the overlooked series of one-shots, National Comics, came out, this time focusing on Madam X, a modern-day reimagining of Madame Xanadu. It came off as a poor man's Medium clone, and with the real Madame Xanadu doing great things in books like Justice League Dark and Demon Knights, it's really quite unnecessary. The other number one this week was Talon, the Night of the Owls spin-off book featuring an assassin named Calvin Rose returning to Gotham City to take down the secret organization that raised him. It was mostly exposition, but if you can't get enough Court of Owls, this is the book for you. You don't have to look for a number one for a fresh start this week, however. A brand new status quo is brought to life in I, Vampire, when Mary, Queen of Blood, the villain we've been chasing for a whole year, suddenly becomes the main character. It's certainly a bold move, and I urge people to go out and try this book. It's been consistently good in both writing and art since the beginning, and it gets very little attention. More new arcs are starting up as well. Central City is invaded by talking gorillas and the Flash. He must team up with his enemies the Rogues to save the city from Gorilla Grodd. I know I'm a bit biased since Flash is my favorite DC hero, but if you don't like this book, you have no soul. Its story is interesting and complex, and the art is almost painterly in its elegant charm. It's one of the best books released month after month, and that's no joke. Speaking of great books, Batman Incorporated came out this week as well. Morrison's run is quickly coming to a spectacular climax in the pages of this masterpiece, and I'm loving every minute of it. This issue is non-stop action showcasing almost every member of Batman Incorporated, with the reveal of a long-time mystery at the end to top it off like a cherry sundae. However, it is not very friendly to new readers, so if you would like to really appreciate it, I'd recommend going all the way back to the Black Glove days, when Morrison first started writing Batman. It's a tall order, but oh so worth it. Some other things of note: Lobdell's run on Superman finally gets into full swing, and continues to be highly divisive. If you don't like Lobdell, sometimes overly dramatic writing, this issue won't change your mind. But I find that I enjoyed the issue. It's a bit of a guilty pleasure. Kenneth Rockfort's stunning artwork certainly didn't hurt. And last thing of note is Savage Hawkman number 13, speaking of guilty pleasures. Liefeld is officially out of the picture, and the books he has will most certainly start to get better. Hawkman was always the best of the Liefeld three, and this issue is no exception. It's not a masterpiece by any means, but it's a nice guilty pleasure if you are a fan of Thanagar or DC Cosmic, and it's something to watch out for in the future. Moving on to Marvel, this was the week of bittersweet endings. I haven't felt this many feelings reading a comic book in a long, long time. 5 series had their final issues this week. Captain America, Deadpool, Future Foundation, Incredible Hulk, and Invincible Iron Man. The only true dud was Deadpool, which has been nothing but filler for about 20 or 30 issues now. I'm glad to see the character being given to comedians Brian Posehn and Jerry Dugan. They'll hopefully have a better handle on the character. The others were all standard fare. If you liked the books previously, you'll want to see how their respective runs conclude. Captain America number 19 and Future Foundation number 23 had particularly heartfelt endings, with Future Foundation getting the gold this week for being both heartbreaking and adorable at the same time. If you have any attachment to Franklin Richards or the Richards family, you can't miss this issue. Now, not technically a final issue, Journey into Mystery number 645 certainly feels like one. We've spent an entire year following the journey of Kid Loki, and Kieran Gillen's critically and fan-acclaimed run concludes at last. If I had a soul, this issue would most likely bring me to tears. It's not the final story for Loki. He'll be joining the Young Avengers in January, but it is without a doubt the end of an era for him. If you are at all interested in comics, and you don't read Loki's Journey into Mystery, I will legitimately defriend you. It's the best collective run I've read in years, and I don't talk about it on here as much as it deserves. It's Journey into Mystery, issues number 622 to 645, if you want to know. But canceling a bunch of comics isn't the only thing Marvel did this week. The aftermath of Avengers vs. X-Men continues, with AVX Consequences number 4 and A-Babies vs. X-Babies number 1. One book is a ham-fisted attempt to turn Cyclops into the new Magneto, and the other is an adorable standalone comic of baby Avengers fighting baby X-Men because Cyclops stole Captain America's teddy bear. I'm sure you can tell which one I liked better. Speaking of ham-fisted, the final arc of Bendis' Avengers run continues, with the return of the Wasp from the dead. Turns out she was stuck in the microverse all this time. Yeah, that's not contrived at all. Moving on. The United We Stand event continues with Ultimate Comics Ultimates number 17. It's nothing special, and I'm starting to think this event is dragging on way too long. The introduction of Thor's son as the new mastermind villain is both out of left field and way too over the top to be taken seriously. I'm just ready for them to move on by this point. And last but not least, new number ones were released as well, keeping with Marvel's promise of a new number one every single week. Punisher Warzone number 1 is the beginning of a miniseries about the Avengers trying to take down the Punisher and imprisoning him for allegedly killing a cop. With Rucka at the helm, I expected more, and so far it hasn't exactly lived up to his phenomenal main Punisher series, which just recently ended. I'm wondering why this couldn't have just been a part of that book anyway. Along with that came Wolverine Max number 1. It's an alternate universe title, basically a what if Wolverine existed in a world without superheroes kind of story. It's going back to the basics for the character, which would be okay if we hadn't seen this story a million times already. The art is interesting, but the book hasn't exactly hooked me yet. Oh, I should also note that Amazing Spider-Man and Secret Avengers were both great books this week as well. Nothing groundbreaking, but they are both considerably better than they have been recently. If you dropped either of those titles recently, because of the dip in quality, I advise giving this week's offerings another look. You might like what you see. And with that, I'm about tired of talking. As always, let me know if you have any questions, comments, or just want to talk about comics. I'm always up for a conversation. You can hit me up on my blog at digforgold.blogspot.com, or just tweet me at redcomwy. So, one and all, I'll be back next week to give you the skinny on all the best news and reviews of the comics world. Stay golden, folks, and keep reading.